everybody, it's great to see you today. Today is June 18th and we have a very interesting lesson today in the book of 2 Kings. I hope you enjoyed it. Today's lesson is entitled A Coup d'etat, and we have some intrigue and some murder and an overthrow to talk about today, so I hope that you enjoyed the reading. We're going to jump right in today, and I'd like to summarize for you briefly the past couple of days reading. Basically, we need to understand that there are, in the book of 1st and 2nd Kings, there are a line of kings in the north and in the south, and the book of Kings tells us the story of the kings, and we look at, are they a good king, are they a bad king? It doesn't go into inordinate detail about each of the kings, but God does make sure to tell us basically what He thinks about them. And have you noticed that He always includes whether or not they worshiped Him or whether or not they turned away and worshiped idols? So that to God is very important. We sometimes think how important it is for our building achievements or our in their case, how they thought building things was so important. And even today, we think that our accomplishments are important. But isn't it interesting how God always looks at a man's and a woman's heart and sees inside and does the person love Him? And that is what is important to Him. Now, Ahab was a king in the north, and he was a very bad king. He married Jezebel, as you recall. In the reading yesterday, we see that Ahab is dead and Jezebel is eaten by dogs, which was prophesied by God. The king Ahaziah, Ahaziah, was the son of Jehoram, which is a southern king. Now you have to keep straight the northern kings and the southern king, because remember, the kingdom of Israel was divided after Solomon died. They had a bit of civil war, if you will. And we refer to the north as Israel, and we refer to the south, the two tribes, Judah and Benjamin, as Judah. So when you're reading, that will help you to understand. The king in the south, Jehoram, married a woman that was related to Ahab and Jezebel, one of their daughters, and she corrupted things in the south and brought Baal worship to the south. Baal is B-A-A-L, is a very famous idol that the Canaanites worshipped, and she brought that into the southern kingdom. We also see that in the reading yesterday that God has replaced the southern king with this man named Jehu, Jehu, and it was sort of a divine approval that he do all these things. He killed the king in the south, he killed the king in the north, and he took over as king in the south of Judah. It says that he did some good things. He destroyed all of the Baal priests and the temple and converted it into a public bathroom, if you will. But it says he did not follow God with his whole heart. And so we see yet again a reminder to us, do we follow God with our whole heart? Now, let me tell you about this woman in today's reading, June 18. The mother of Ahaziah, which is the king that Jehu killed. He was the king in the south. His mother, her name is Athaliah, and she was related to the royal family in the north, to Jezebel, and she was a terrible woman. She was a wicked woman, actually. She was power hungry, and we see her today on a royal rampage. She kills all of the royal family to be queen. Actually, she kills her grandchildren because her sons had been killed in battle with the Philistines and the Arabians. So when she heard that the king, her son, was killed, she says to herself, I can usurp the throne, and she tries to kill all her grandchildren. However, do you remember in the reading, one child is saved by a wonderful woman named Jehosheba, and she saves this infant child. And the infant child is named Joash, who does end up becoming king, but thanks to the heroics of this woman. Now, let's talk about the wicked woman for just a minute, the one who killed her grandchildren. And she's actually the daughter of Ahab, that wicked king from the north. So her mother is Jezebel. So you can imagine the influence that she had growing up and how she could come to do such a terrible thing. She's married to Jehoram, the king that is killed by Jehu that we talked about just a moment ago. So she usurps the throne, and she remains unchallenged for 6 years. She's the only queen of Judah that we ever see, and she reigns 6 years. And she completely ignores the edict that God had set out that said David's dynasty would rule forever in Judah, for she did not come from that dynasty. So surely we know that her time is short. Well, in the reading today, we learn how short. After 7 years, in the 7th year, Joash, the baby that was saved when he was just an infant, is brought out of hiding. You see, Jehosheba, the woman that saved him, is married to the high priest. Let's see, how do I pronounce this? Today's going to be J Day because there's so many J names to pronounce. Jehoiada was the high priest, and he and his wife had saved this baby but kept him hidden in the temple, where probably near him, the high priest, where he would be working for 7 years. When he's 7 years old, Joash is 7 years old, they bring him out of hiding, they show him to the people, they coronate him, put the crown on him, just as Athaliah is coming in, and she sees this coronation and she knows, what she says is treason, treason. But she's the one that shouldn't be on the throne. She's the one that committed treason so long ago. So they end up killing her and putting Joash on the throne, where he ends up reigning for 40 years. So he's 7 years old as he begins, and he reigns until he's 47 years old. The years that we're talking about are 835 to 796 BC. These were the years of Joash's reign. And he is a good king as long as his mentor, Jehoiada, is alive and ruling as high priest. Now, Jehoiada is the one who organized this whole coup d'etat, this whole overthrow. And when he placed Joash on the throne when he was 7 years old, when the baby was 7, well, the young boy was 7, he also gave him a copy of God's laws. I just had to stop and reread that part again to think how important that is when we're in positions of leadership, whether it's, in any place, in our church, in our home, in our place of business. It's just so important to keep, good leaders keep a copy of God's laws in front of them at all times. And that was 2 Kings 11:12. He actually helped Joash until he got older as he was ruling. And Jehoiada destroyed the Baal shrines and lived to a ripe old age of 130 years old. He was actually buried in the royal tomb, which was quite an honor. There weren't too many besides the royals that got to be buried there, but he was in recognition of his service to the community. But after he died, something terrible happened. The people turned away from God, worshipped their Asherah poles, worshipped the idols, and even Joash, whom was loyal to Jehoiada during his lifetime, after all Jehoiada had done for him. I mean, he owed this man his very life. Think about all those years where they kept him hidden. That reminded me of the movie The Man in the Iron Mask, and how loyal the musketeers were to the king, and how loyal Jehoiada was to Joash his whole life. And something so disappointing happens. Joash actually ends up killing Jehoiada's son later on, and he does not remain loyal to Jehoiada after Jehoiada dies. And Jehoiada has a son named Zechariah. Now, there are 28 people in the Bible named Jeremiah. Not Jeremiah. Zechariah. This is not the Zechariah, I don't believe, that wrote the book Zechariah, because the dates don't coincide. So this must be another Zechariah. But he was actually killed in the temple courtyard, not by Joash, but at Joash's command. And interestingly enough, Jesus actually refers to this incident in Matthew 23, verse 34 and 35. I thought you might want to go take a look at that. We see in the reading today that the temple needs to be repaired, and you might wonder, well, why does the temple need to be repaired? Well, for those 6 years that this wicked woman was queen, she was worshiping Baal and wanting the people to worship other gods, and she let the temple get in disrepair for those many years. So here we see the first temple restoration project. Well, in summary today, there are a couple of applications I think we can pull from the lesson today. You know, in reading Jehu, his actions in killing the king and taking over the throne, you might think, you know, how could he do that and get away with it? Well, he had divine approval in doing that. And I think what we need to understand is revival has negative aspects of judgment, but also positive steps of rededication. Jehu was rededicating the country, removing the Baal shrines, and he had to get rid of the people that allowed them to be there, and the people that encouraged the Israelites to worship the foreign gods. So we have to understand that Jehu had divine approval in doing this. Now, Joash, after his mentor Jehoiada died, turned to idolatry himself. And here's the application. When our faith is tied to another person and not to the Lord directly, this kind of thing can happen. So, is your faith tied to another person? Maybe it's to your mother, to your parent, to a mentor, or are you living out a personal relationship with God Himself? If Joash had developed a personal relationship, I wonder if his outcome wouldn't have been different. Number 3, David's dynasty was to rule forever. Can you see how the Lord is bringing this to pass? He may let a usurper, this wicked woman, take over the throne for a short time, but the Lord certainly watches over and will bring it in right standing in the end. At the very end of our reading today, it's almost a little blip, and I didn't want you to miss it because it's important historically to understand so that you can understand what happens in the reading over the next couple of days. Jehu dies, and it says in 2 Kings 10, verse 32, about that time the Lord began to cut down the size of Israel. Don't overlook this. This is very important. You know, nations rise and nations fall. History is cyclical like that. And what we're seeing here is that God is allowing the lands of Israel to decrease. Aram, the King Hazael, is from the land of Damascus, which is north of Israel, has taken over the lands that Israel used to have, everything east of the Jordan. That's a lot of land. Another thing we don't see in the Bible, but we read in the history books, is Assyria. Assyria is now ruled by Shalmaneser III, and it actually says in the history books that Jehu actually pays tribute and doesn't bow in worship, but bows down in tribute to the Assyrian king, because the Assyrian king now is rising in power. Now, the Assyrians are going to rise in power and they're going to fall, but this is very important because an invasion like no other is coming in Israel. And I want you to start thinking about Assyria and how God is rising them up, because He is going to do something with Assyria here to teach Israel a lesson. Jehu has lost old allies. When Jezebel died, it infuriated the Phoenicians, and this is how the tides turn and Israel can come to lose so much land. So I hope that's enough of a history lesson today for you to kind of get a taste of what's going on. before or behind the scenes as well. So I hope you've enjoyed the lesson today. Tomorrow we're going to continue in our reading, and we have some interesting reading again tomorrow. Intrigue continues. So blessings to you and your family. I can't wait to see you again tomorrow.